Hey guys, my name is Malaka. If you're new to Witcher 3, then you might be stumped on deciding which skills are good for you. You might be watching this video because you are new to making builds in this game and do not know what some skills do or how they actually work. Today I'll be going over every ability in the game and how they work. I'll also talk about how some skills can be used on certain builds. Starting off with fast attacks. The muscle memory increases fast attack damage. It does exactly as it says, so when you do a fast attack, it will increase its damage by 30%. Precision blows. Increased chance of landing a fast attack critical hit by 12% and fast attack critical hit damage by 75%. So when you use a fast attack, those values are increased. Whirl. It spins all around you. You have to hold the fast attack button down to use it. It consumes stamina, and then once all stamina is depleted, it will start using adrenaline. The higher the skill is, it'll use less stamina and adrenaline. Crippling strikes. Fast attacks now also apply a bleeding effect. Enemies lose 150 vitality or essence points per second. This is good with the Grandmaster set bonus for the Wolven armor, since each bleed stack increases sword damage. However, this build or this skill isn't really that great in any build besides Wolven, since the damage does not scale with enemy, so it becomes very weak later on. Now for strong attacks. They're pretty much the same as the fast attacks but have two different skills. So Rend deals additional damage depending on how much stamina you use. It's a charged up strong attack that you use stamina. It increases critical hit damage by 60%, so that's good. And adrenaline points increase total damage by 33%, so you can have up to 100% adrenaline point increased damage with Rend, not including the additional damage that adrenaline already provides. This is very good for one-shotting builds. I highly recommend it. Sunder armor reduces enemy damage resistance by 30%. Monsters have the majority of the resistances out of enemies in this game. Applying the Sunder armor effect to an enemy is very easy. You just do one strong attack with this skill active, and that enemy will permanently have this effect. So you can just hit them once with a strong attack, then use fast attacks. It's very good. Next up, defense. You have arrow deflection. When you hold down the parry button, any arrows that come at you will be reflected, and if you parry at the right time, you can reflect them back. This skill is good for just normal play. It's not really good for any build. It's also useful for that one Steam achievement. That's about it. Fleet-footed is amazing. Damage from hits received while dodging is reduced by 100%. So, dodging in this game is weird. If you dodge normally, you won't get hit unless if you dodge towards the enemy. If you dodge towards the attack, then you're going to get hit. But this completely negates that, so you can dodge towards enemies while still technically dodging, and you can just stay close to enemies and keep hitting them a lot. It's very useful. Counterattack. After a successful counterattack, the next attack does 30% damage per skill level being how many times you level counterattack. So since it's level 3, it does plus 90% more damage. And is a critical hit with a chance of knockdown based on number of adrenaline points. So if you have max adrenaline, the next attack will always be a critical and will always knock down. Deadly Precision adds adrenaline point, or each adrenaline point adds 2% to the chance of killing an opponent instantly. It cannot be triggered more than once every 15 seconds. This is very good for high level enemies. So if you go to Skellige, there's going to be some high level Cyclops. You can use this to kill them at a lower level so you can get a Cyclops eye very easily if you're making certain armor sets. This is also good if you already utilize adrenaline. It's just worth taking. Do note that this applies to swords, crossbows, bombs, and a specific glyph word called retribution. It does not apply to signs, so don't use this for a sign build. Next up, crossbows. All of these you'd only really use for a crossbow build, but lightning reflex. Time is slowed by an additional 50% while aiming with the crossbow, so when you hold the crossbow button down, it'll aim. With this skill, it'll slow down time longer. Cold blood generates adrenaline with bolts that hit its target, so when you hit someone, you get adrenaline with the crossbow. Atomical Knowledge. Increase your crossbow crit hit chance by 60%. Pretty obvious. Crippling Shot. So when you land a critical hit, as in like crit hits on a monster, it will disable their special abilities for 10 seconds, 30 seconds at max level. This is a strange skill because you can shoot like a harpy and their flying ability is deleted for 30 seconds, making it very easy to kill harpies, but it doesn't apply to ghosts for some reason. They just won't not teleport, and they'll still be immaterialized, so it doesn't work on them, but it can work on some enemies like fire elementals where their fire is dampened because that's their special ability. It's specific, and you'd really only use this for a crossbow build. Next up, we have the Adrenaline Tree. Something to note, hovering over this core ability, blows landed during combat generate adrenaline. Each adrenaline point increases weapon damage by 10%. So adrenaline is an underutilized mechanic in my opinion. I don't see a lot of people using it. But if each adrenaline point increases weapon damage, which is attack power, so that applies to swords and crossbows, by 10%, that's up to 30% more attack power that people don't utilize in combat. It has more uses than just damage. I feel like more people should use this skill, so that's why I'm making this video in the first place. Resolve. When you take damage, you lose adrenaline, but with Resolve, if you have it at max, you will take no adrenaline point loss when you take damage. It's very useful for maintaining high adrenaline, which allows you to utilize the weapon damage. Undying. If you were to die, you will be restored with 67% of your vitality at the cost of 1 adrenaline point consumed. If you have no adrenaline points available, then you will die normally. This is good for survival. You can stay alive longer. It's just nice to have if you already use combat a lot. If you're doing a pure sign build, you probably won't want this since there's other skills that can boost signs with adrenaline that I'll get to later. Razor Focus. Instantly gain 1 adrenaline point when entering combat. The adrenaline points generated by swords blows are increased by 30%. This is very good if you like generating adrenaline through swords primarily, though there really isn't an issue with generating adrenaline with your swords. You'd only use this for the 1 point when you get in combat, which is at Razor Focus 2 out of 3 I think. But that's nice, it generates more adrenaline. Flood of Anger is weird. When casting a sign, 3 adrenaline points, if available, will be consumed to upgrade the sign to the highest level, unlocking all bonuses, and increase sign intensity by 300%. On paper, this sounds very good, 3 adrenaline to make a very strong sign. However, it's not as good as you might think, because other skills that increase sign damage with adrenaline points can do a lot more than consuming all your adrenaline points into one sign. Signs typically, if you're trying to go for a lot of sign damage, you want to spam them rather than condense it all into one shot and then have like weaker signs afterwards. I don't know. This skill, I mean, if you want high damage signs, like if you want a one-shotting sign build, you might want to use this, where one sign gets the job done, you can use this. If you want, in my opinion, the best possible use out of this is a high Quen physical damage reduction build, where a Quen shield has very high physical damage reduction, so it can take multiple hits before breaking. You might want to consider using this. Next up, the Sign Tree. Starting off with Ard. Far-reaching Ard. Ard has a certain amount of range, and this skill increases that range by 3 yards at max level. Ard Sweep. When you hold down the Ard or the Sign cast ability with Ard selected, it will do an AoE sweep around you. Do note that your knockdown chance with Ard Sweep is lower until you have Ard Sweep maxed, which that penalty is removed. Ard Intensity increases your Ard sign intensity by 30%, which can increase your knockdown chance, or if you have this next skill, Shockwave, or Piercing Cold, it'll do more damage. which Shockwave increases the damage dealt by Ard up to 300 damage, which it depends on how many times you've upgraded this skill, and damage scales with enemy level, so the higher the level of the enemy, the more damage it'll do. Next is Igni, Melt Armor. This skill is generally not helpful. Damage dealt by Igni also permanently weakens enemy armor. Effect scales with sign intensity up to maximum of 75%. So, enemies that have armor are humans, or bandits, or anything that isn't a monster. They have armor whilst monsters have resistances. But the skill is kind of weak and pointless. You'd only really use this for the stamina regeneration in combat, or just early leveling of sign skills so that you can reach later skills. Fire Stream, when you hold down the sign cast ability with Igni active, it will do a continuous stream of fire that damages enemies. Stamina cost is reduced by 50%, and that's because it's 3 out of 3. This skill is kind of bad, but in a way good. If you want to use Igni strictly throughout your entire game, even against ghosts or elementals or golems, this is good because Fire Stream acts as a forced burn, and you can burn all the time. Your burn chance is very high, but what I find very good is the fire damage is more direct and can do about the same amount of damage as a normal Igni cast while condensed in one full fire stream. And what that means is instead of getting most of your damage out of burn, it does most of the damage out of continuous flame, meaning it does high damage against golems or wraiths even though they're normally weak to Igni and can't burn. Which, other than that, I mean, there's shields. If you burn a shield with Fire Stream, it can go through the shield, which then causes the shield guy to burn, and then he'll drop the shield, which is pretty good. If you don't have high sign intensity, and you don't have 100% burn rate, then Fire Stream is good. Otherwise, this skill is kind of pointless, in my opinion. Igni Intensity increases Igni sign intensity by 30%, so you'll have more chance to burn enemies, and you'll do more burning damage. Pyromaniac, increase the chance to apply burning by 100%. This is while it's at max level. So you'll always burn enemies. It's a very good skill. Unless if you have insane sign intensity, then this doesn't really matter. I slot this anyways because there's nothing really else to slot. I mean, if I'm just going pure signs, then I'm just going to slot this anyways, because it really doesn't matter if I put like Ard, Shockwave, and an Igni build, because I'm going to use Igni anyways, even though this has no effect with high sign intensity. Sustained Glyphs increase the sign duration of Yrden when it's placed down. The number of alternate mode charges, which I'll get to in a moment, is increased to 9, and number of standard mode traps is 2, so when this is 2 out of 2, you can place down 2 Yrden Glyphs down on the ground at the same time without the other one disappearing. This is very good for wraiths, just makes wraiths much easier to fight. Magic Trap, which involves sustained glyphs. It's a trap that shoots projectiles at enemies within a 14-yard radius and destroys projectiles that enter it, and damage is increased by 50%, which scales off the level of Magic Trap. The amount of times this shoots depends on sustained glyphs, which it shoots a total of 9 times if you have sustained glyphs 2 out of 2. Yrden Intensity. Yrden sign intensity is increased by 30%, so the duration of your Yrden on the ground will increase, I think, with this, and the slowdown will increase to a maximum of some slowdown percentage. I can't remember off the top of my head. But there's a cap now. You used to be able to slow down enemies at 100%, but it just couldn't move at all. And if you have Magic Trap, then the damage of Magic Trap will be increased with this. Supercharged Glyphs is actually a very good skill that can be utilized at most at a lower level or for damage over time builds. Enemies under the influence of Yrden lose 30 points of vitality or essence per second, which doesn't seem good until you realize it scales with enemy level and sign intensity. So you can kill very high level enemies with this, at such a low level, and it's damage over time. So you just place down Yrden, they stand in it, and they constantly have the Yrden effect, and it scales to their level. So having damage over time that scales to enemy levels is very good, unlike Cripple Strikes, which doesn't even scale at all. This is why I think damage over time can be quite overpowered with this one skill. It's pretty underutilized. If you're fighting the Golem for the new Easter egg of next gen, this is very good to get. Or just any enemy in general. For Quen, Quen Shield pushes back opponents and deals damage when it breaks with a chance of knockdown. The chance of knockdown depends on sign intensity, I think. I have no idea about that. The damage deal is at a later level of Exploding Shield, but at level 1 Exploding Shield it will push away enemies. So this is good if you want Quen damage, or just when it breaks you don't want enemies near you, so you can reapply Quen in safety. Active Shield, when you hold down the sign cast button, it'll automatically hold a shield around you. You have to maintain it, you can't just press it and have it. Stamina is drained, but at level 3, stamina is not drained when you hold it. Anytime you are attacked, the shield is absorbing that attack and you'll heal you. This is very good for early game healing, or even later game healing during mid fights for fast healing. One active shield can get you from 0 health to full health very quickly. Quen Intensity. This will increase the amount that the physical damage reduction of Quen Shield will have. And it can also increase the damage of Exploding Shield. The physical damage reduction is how much Quen can take, so increasing that can allow you to take more than just one hit, so you don't have to reply it as much. Quen Discharge reflects 30% of absorbed damage back to the attacker, so when you use Quen and someone hits your Quen, then 30% of the damage that Quen took will be absorbed and reflected back to the attacker. This is very powerful for reflection builds, and because it depends on the attacker, it can scale, so this is pretty good. Delusion. Target does not move towards Geralt while he is casting Axii, increase the effectiveness of Axii in dialogues, and reduce Axii casting time. Failed Axii attempts stagger the opponent. A lot is going on, so when you cast Axii normally, enemies can still move towards you while you're casting Axii on them. With Delusion, they don't do that anymore. During dialogue, you can use Axii in dialogue to do different options. Some dialogue is going to need a higher level delusion, so having a 3 out of 3 delusion helps with that. Reduce Axii casting time, which can be quite slow in combat, and sometimes it fails, so having it at least stagger is good. Delusion is probably the only good skill in my opinion from what I've seen of Axii. The rest are kind of weak. Puppet, you can make a targeted ally become, or a targeted enemy become an ally, and deal 60% more damage. So when you hold the signcast button on an enemy, you can make them your ally, which will attack the enemies for you. The higher the level, the more damage it does. Increase Axii sign intensity, so this will affect how much duration they are hypnotized for. So when you use it on them, they are stopped in their tracks under the influence of Axii, and this will increase that duration. Domination allows you to inflict 2 opponents with Axii. In order to actually use this, you need Puppet, which, is kind of weird. But anyways, they'll do less damage unless if you had Domination at 3 out of 3, and that's all the signs. Alright, next up, Alchemy. So, starting off with the number 1, Heightened Tolerance. This will increase the threshold of your toxicity. So if you don't know, if you get 50% or more, or get past 50% of the toxicity bar, you will start taking damage over time. This is not great because no one likes taking damage over time. So by increasing the threshold, you can drink more potions before reaching the threshold, so you can avoid taking that damage over time. Refreshment. Each potion imbibed heals 30% maximum HP. This is any potion. I'm not sure about decoctions, but when you drink a potion, they will immediately give you 30% of your maximum vitality. This is pretty good if you just want more survivability. Delayed recovery. Potion effects don't wear off until toxicity falls to 55% of the maximum level. So you'll need to go past 55% of your toxicity meter with potions. This does not apply to decoctions. Out of potion toxicity. And as long as you're above 55%, the effect of that potion will not wear off. The White Rafford decoction effect does not apply because it was patched, because this was broken. Side effects. Imbibing a potion gives a 100% chance of activating another effect of a randomly selected potion without the additional toxicity cost. If you just want more potions, this is great. If not, you don't really need it. You'll need max level to get 100% chance, so I recommend if you use this to upgrade it. Poison blades. When you have oil applied to your blade, you have a 15% chance of poisoning a target on each hit, and the chance is greater the level of oil used. Pretty self-explanatory. When you apply oil to your blade, it has a chance of poisoning, and that chance is higher based on the level of this skill and the type of poison you use, or oil you use. Protective coating adds 15% protection against attacks from monsters from the monster type the oil targets. So let's say you put on the Hangman's Venom on your steel sword, then humans do 15% less damage to you because you have 15% more damage reduction or protection against that. This is quite good for tank builds, so I highly recommend it. Fixative is weird because you can have auto-apply oils on or off, but what Fixative does is make it so blade oils do not wear off, and you can apply up to 3 different oils on a sword at a time. If you do not have auto-apply oils on the settings on, then this Fixative is actually quite useful, because you might encounter a random ghoul and you'll want to have your oil on your blade, but you might also encounter some drowners, which are also necrophages, so you might encounter you'll just encounter different monsters and you'll want different oils, but you don't feel like putting all the oils in mid-combat on. This is nice, and it makes it so that they are unlimited. However, with auto-apply oils, it'll make it so that when you hit an enemy, it'll detect that enemy and automatically apply the oil that is needed for that enemy on your sword. Meaning, preparing with oil before a battle is pointless, and even if you run out of oil, if you hit them again without oil, it'll automatically apply that oil, and you'll have it again. So, if you have auto-apply oils off, it can be immersive and this skill is useful. If you have it on, you're more practical and this skill is kind of useless. So it depends if you want to be more gameplay related or if you want to be more immersive with your gameplay. Hunter Instinct is another questionable skill. When adrenaline points are at their maximum, critical hit damage against targeted enemy type is increased by 100%. This sounds amazing, but what identifies as targeted enemy type? Does it mean with oils? Like if I put Hangman's oil on my sword, I'll do 100% more damage to humans while I have max adrenaline. That is not the case. What about target locking? That is not the case. Before next gen update, this skill did not even work. So they patched it, and what this actually means is when adrenaline points are at their maximum, critical hit damage is increased by 100% with swords and crossbows, or weapons. So if you use a sword or crossbow, your weapon damage, crit hit damage will be increased by 100% when your adrenaline points at its max. This skill makes no sense and is worded so wrong it could be so misleading. And I've seen people try to use this in bomb builds, but it doesn't actually increase your damage. I've tested and it only works with crossbows and swords. And you don't need oils, you don't need to lock on, you just need max adrenaline now, and you need to use a sword or crossbow. Alright, on to bombs. Any of these bomb skills will be best when used with bombs. Otherwise, don't use them. But steady aim increases time slowed when aiming with bombs. So when you hold the bomb cast button or wherever the button is for your crossbow or objective item is, you'll slow time further while aiming. Steady aim is very good with cluster bombs, and I'll get that in a second. Pyrotechnics, all bombs, even those that don't usually inflict damage, now deal 150 additional damage to their normal effects. So even if you have a Dimeridium bomb, with pyrotechnics it'll do 150 damage. If you have Grape Shot at superior level, which does like 450, it'll now do 600. It's a pretty good skill, makes bombs do more damage. Efficiency, increase the maximum number of bombs in each slot. So if I have like 2 Grape Shot bombs when I used a skill, I'll have 5 Grape Shot bomb charges. Or if I have 4 Grape Shot bombs with efficiency at max, then I'll have 7 Grape Shot bombs. This just gives more bombs. This applies to any bomb, by the way. Cluster bombs. Upon detonation, bombs separate into explosive fragments. So at max level, you'll have 4 fragments. Do note that the initial bomb that you throw that hits its enemy does not actually explode. Instead, it splits off into 4 different bombs. So you're completely changing how your bombs work. Instead of being a direct impact bomb, Jesus, mouthful, it will then hit its enemy or surface, and then it will bust open and separate into 4 fragments, which then explode into explosives. Which, if you're trying to throw at one enemy, can be a bit weird and clunky how it explodes. It won't actually hit that enemy sometimes, and it can just completely miss even though it has 4 explosive bombs. So what I do is I use steady aim, and I aim at the ground so I can position my cluster bombs to hit more enemies more effectively instead of just normally throwing it, which makes cluster bombs much more effective. Again, these are all good for bomb builds, otherwise you don't really need them. Quiet talents. Every known level 1, 2, or 3, depending on how high of a level of quiet talents is, alchemy formula increases maximum toxicity by 0.5. This doesn't sound good on paper, but with how many toxicity or alchemy formulas there are, your toxicity will be increased by over 100 with this one skill. It's like 80 something, I think. Anyways, this is really good if you want more toxicity. It's the major way you increase your toxicity in this game. So this is very good if you want to drink more potions. Tissue transmutation. Each decoction you drink will give you 900 more vitality for the decoction's duration. So if I drink Algul decoction, then I'll get 900 more maximum vitality. You will instantly gain the vitality upon drinking it. You won't have to regen the HP just to have that maximum HP boost. And this also works with the Metamorphosis skill, which makes it so that each critical effect applied to an enemy will apply a random decoction. So if you want a high HP setup, this is very good. Synergy works with any build. It increases the bonus for mutagens placed in mutagen slot by 50%. So when I place a mutagen in this slot, it normally is like 10%, but this will be 10% stronger, or 50% stronger, sorry, and even stronger with however many skills are placed alongside here. I recommend anyone playing in this game should invest in alchemy, just at least to get synergy, even if you focus mainly in swords or signs. This is too good to pass up. You really should just get this for anything. Adaptation extends effective duration of mutagen decoctions by 100%, so it does exactly what you said. So your decoctions will have 100% more duration. So instead of most decoctions being 1800 seconds, it will be 3600 seconds. Frenzy. If toxicity is above 0, time automatically slows down when an enemy is about to perform a counterattack, or when they're about to attack you, is what it actually means. The slowing effect and duration are greater than for level 2 of this ability. This skill is good if you like using counterattacks, which can be paired with the counterattack skill in the red tree. So then you can easily counterattack, but you need toxicity to be above 0. Otherwise, this skill is kind of just more for cinematic purposes in my opinion. there isn't really an advantage. You can still parry them or counterattack the same way. It's just helpful, I guess. Endure Pain increase maximum vitality by 30% when the toxicity exceeds the safe threshold. Again, another skill that's good for high HP build, which can help you tank more elemental effects like fire or poisoning or running out of breath and taking damage from that. Fast metabolism, toxicity drops by 3 points per second faster. This can be bad with some builds, but if you just want to drink more swallow without going over the threshold, then this is probably good. Or if you want to drink White Rafford, but you're like 45% and you need your toxicity to be less, getting this wouldn't be bad. If toxicity is above 0, each opponent killed increases critical hit chance by 30% for the duration of the fight. This is insanely good because if you just kill like 4 enemies, you have 120% crit hit chance, which means you always crit for the rest of that fight. Depending on how much crit hit chance you have, you don't even need 4 kills. You can get like 1 and then have guaranteed crits. So that's very good. Moving on to general skills, you have Sun and Stars. This skill is probably the worst skill in the game, in my opinion. When during the day, your vitality regenerates by 10 HP per second when not in combat. So you already have 1 vitality regen, so this will make it 11. And at night, your stamina regenerates by an additional 1 point per second faster, so then you'll have however much, depending on how much stamina regen you have. It's so little, it makes almost no difference, and a vitality regeneration of the day can easily be surpassed by the terrible foods, which do more, or you could just drink swallow. This isn't really good in any build unless if you have absolutely no food, no potions, no alcohol to replenish potions, or you didn't make any in the first place, and you really need health gain. Otherwise, this is completely useless. Survival Instinct increases maximum vitality by 15%. This is very good for HP builds. Each piece of light armor increases crit hit damage by 25% and fast attack by 5%. The crit hit damage applies to anything like your swords, your crossbow, it applies to bombs. It does not apply to signs though, because signs are just weird, they're special or something. The fast attack damage only applies to fast attacks. Do note you have to wear light armor, which it'll say the rating like light, medium, or heavy on the armor. You'll need to wear light armor to get value out of this. This is the medium armor version, which increases your sign intensity and stamina regeneration. Pretty much used in any sign build. You'll want this if you use sign builds, otherwise you don't use it. Bear School, each piece of heavy armor increases maximum vitality by 5% and strong attack by 5%. You can use this to gain more HP for a vitality build, or if you like strong attacks, it's not bad getting heavy armor to do more strong attacks like Urzine, or Urzine is what it's called technically. If you need these skills, like let's say you're using Urzine armor set but you want cat school techniques, you can visit the Runewrite part of the Hearts of Stone DLC and apply Levitai glyph word on your armor, so then your Urzine armor can become light armor and get this buff. Or if you want strong attacks with feline gear, you can apply the Heft glyph word on your feline armor and get the Bear School techniques buff. It's very cool, adds more variety and build potential, it's very good. Steady Shot, crossbow bolts deal 25% more damage, plain and simple. Rage management, if your stamina is too low, signs can be cast using adrenaline points. You can use Blizzard, which makes it so you have unlimited stamina. I'll get to that in maybe a future video or something. But generally there's better ways of using your adrenaline than wasting on signs. Adrenaline Burst, increase generation of adrenaline by 5%, and using signs now generates adrenaline, so this can be used to maintain adrenaline even if you use only signs. This increases both weapon damage and sign intensity with adrenaline points. Now what it actually means is sign intensity is increased with adrenaline points alongside your weapon damage, because your weapon damage already is increased by adrenaline by 30 or 10% per adrenaline point and up to 30%. So with this skill, that also applies to signs, so you can make it so that your signs can do 30% more adrenaline, or damage, or sign intensity, with 3 adrenaline points. I use this in my sign build because it's just more damage. Metabolic control, increase maximum toxicity by 30 points. Very good for euphoria or toxic blood or just drinking more potions in general. Metabolic, yeah, I can't word. Anyways, if any adrenaline is available, it will be consumed to reduce the toxicity cost of drinking potions by 33% per point. Does not affect immune concoction. So, if you have adrenaline and you drink a potion, it will be used, and the toxicity of that will be reduced. Pretty simple. Trick shot, you can shoot 1 additional bolt before you reload. I know it makes no sense, but you can just shoot 2 bolts out of 1 crossbow. It's pretty much just the Dark Souls Avalon or whatever it's called. The advanced pyrotechnics, when your bombs explode and damage dealt, they generate adrenaline. Good for damage increase. Actually, no, it doesn't. Adrenaline does not apply to bombs, so this is pointless if you like bombs. This only applies to swords or weapons, or if you use this, applies to signs. I don't even know why this exists. This is pointless. Unless if you just use sword and bombs. You can generate much more adrenaline if you use cluster bombs, so it's 4 bombs is 1 big boom. But at that rate, you'll just kill the enemy then, with cluster bombs. So this is just kind of bad. Battle Frenzy. Each adrenaline point increases crit hit chance per point by 8%. Now, this is kind of bad on paper because there's like killing spree, right? However, I think this skill is actually very good because with max adrenaline, that's 24%. Then you have Ren, then you're at 84%. Then with this, you're at 96%. And the base crit hit chance of any fast or strong attack is 5%, so you'll have 101% crit hit chance if you have Battle Frenzy, Rend, and Crushing Blows maxed, and you have 3 adrenaline. And you can just have that at the start of a fight, you can have instant adrenaline. It helps a lot for your one-shotting build if you're going to go for that, or strong attack builds. It's just very nice, which can open up some more options than just Erendite for 100% crit hit rate. You can then use like more swords to have higher crit hit damage, which then can surpass Erendite damage. Strong back, increase inventory weight. This isn't really great for anything, just helps. Gorged on power, the bonus from a place of power lasts indefinitely, but only 1 such bonus can be given at such time. The bonus is so little that I think this skill is not worth. You'd rather just having the limited duration and just go back to the place of power and use it again. And just get the buff if you ever want it. I mean, I don't think any normal player just goes to a place of power just to get a slight buff. It does barely anything and then use swords anyways. I don't know, it's just pointless in my eyes. Gourmet used to be much better with food early game since food did a lot more health regen, but now they do less. Gourmet is still good for a regen build if you're trying to use toxic blood, where you intentionally take damage to reflect a high damage over time effect called toxic on an enemy. But otherwise you don't really need this. It's still okay for early game since you won't have as much swallow and swallow won't be as good. In combat's fire. Amazing skill for bomb build. If you don't have this, you're just going to blow yourself up and you're going to damage yourself. If you use a SAM bomb, you're most likely going to blind yourself. Having this makes it so you don't damage yourself and you don't blind yourself with SAM. For some reason, Northern Wind bombs don't apply to this, so you can throw Northern Wind on yourself and still be perfectly fine. I have no idea why, but that's just how it works. Heavy artillery, bomb damage is tripled, but the number of bombs in slots is decreased by half. This does not apply to bombs which deal no damage. Huge thing though, if you like using utility bombs, and you don't want them to be half, don't use pyrotechnics, because pyrotechnics make all bombs, even those that don't inflict damage, now do 150 damage. And because they now do 150 damage, heavy artillery applies, which makes them triple damage, but the number of bombs is decreased by half. I did use this though in my bomb only run since I had limited bombs and I needed as much damage as possible with bombs. So I did pyrotechnics and heavy artillery. But if you want as many Meridian bombs or Northern Wind bombs or utility bombs, then you probably don't want to get pyrotechnics and heavy artillery together. Finally, attack is the best defense. When you perform defensive actions, you generate adrenaline, and there is varying amounts of adrenaline gain depending on the action. I don't think this skill is good compared to other ways to generate adrenaline. You can probably just get more adrenaline by slapping someone with a sword, just some iron, especially razor focused. That'll generate a lot of adrenaline. So I don't think this skill is that good, especially since this has a cooldown and hitting enemy with a sword doesn't have a cooldown. The counterattacks one is the only good one, especially if you use deadly precision or deadly counter, mutation, then it's good. But otherwise, I don't think it's that great. Alright, so that'll be it for this video. If this video has been any help, please consider subscribing and have a good one. Alright, peace.